Esteemed.
Welcome everybody for this first session. I would first like to express my deepest gratitude to my colleague Professor Sahu and congratulate him for organizing such a wonderful in both senses, the conference per se and the kind of speakers as he has managed to gather, and the topic which is close to our heart in many ways. But before that, I would apologize to you all because I shall not be able to stay beyond 15 minutes. I have some other responsibilities in the university, and I'm the finance officer among 2 or 3 other positions. So I have to be there for a very important meeting at 2 o'clock. So I shall leave in 15 minutes. I would like to request somebody to take over. Sir, perhaps you can come and take over. But because I had promised and Professor Sahu is such a dear friend, the session was to begin, as we know, at 11:30, so I thought I would be able to go back in time. We have a very important highest university level meeting which I cannot avoid going. So that is an apology to all of you from my side, a very sincere apology. I had also thought that I would speak for a while, but as it seems, and we also have then to break for lunch and reassemble for further sessions, so I do not want to contribute to this delay, which is quite natural at times in such conferences. Rather than saying anything about the subject which I had thought of, I would only mention that the Mahabharata is not a text which we read and talk about. It is a text that we often live. Professor Ray had just mentioned earlier what is there not in the Bharata. It is not in the Bharata. It's a very poignant line that Adi Kavi Sharala Das has mentioned, what the amount of knowledge, the stories, and how it could be, in fact, further relished. As Professor Kapoor was narrating, you can go on and on and on. And I also know that many people have said, and I'm not saying it for the first time, Professor Elst is here, he is very well versed with Indian literature. Scholars have said that no Indian reads either the Ramayana or the Mahabharata for the first time, because everybody knows the stories in so many different ways. And it is a tribute to Odia literature that Adi Kavi wrote in many ways correctly, as people say, that the full first version of the entire Mahabharata and many fold longer. So I shall stop here and request the first speaker, Professor Shobharani Das from Otani University, Japan, to give her talk. And I apologize to her as well as to other panelists that I shall leave and excuse my rudeness. Thank you.
Namaste. Without any ornamental words, I would like to start because we are running out of time. It's already more than 1 hour we are delayed. So honorable guests and my dear friends, and today it is really a great opportunity for me to share a few words of my research work with you. So I'm not going to discuss anything about the contents of Mahabharata, but it is just the research products and what kind of thing we are doing. I'll just share that with you. And as the title suggests, so I will introduce briefly the research work of Sarla Mahabharata, so discovered in Japan. And about 20 years ago, the existence of a palm leaf manuscript of Odisha kept in Japan was brought to light. And it is assumed that this palm leaf manuscript might have transmitted to Tsushima-cho village, name of a village, in the middle of the 18th century. Now it has been named as Tsushima Bayo, that is, Bayo means palm leaf manuscript, the palm leaf manuscript of Tsushima, coined after the name of the village where it was discovered in 1998 at the request of the Social Education Division of Tsushima-cho, Professor Hojun Nagasaki, who used to be my teacher also, and now Professor Emeritus of Otani University, Kyoto. He took the charge of conducting a research on this manuscript along with some other scholars, and later I also joined them, and an exhaustive research work was carried on. An extensive fieldwork was conducted in Odisha in March 2001 in this regard, and we obtained precise advices and scholarly suggestions from the experts, including the preservation and restoration of the Tsushima Bio, as a palm leaf manuscript is not native to Japan. Perhaps I can show you what is this Tsushima Bio, a very strange name. So this is the palm leaf manuscript they have found in Japan, perhaps sometime in the mid of 18th century. And so 2 folios I just put so that you can see it is a very typical Odia manuscript. And so now the question arises, where was it and how did they find, and what was it doing there in Japan. So the background history, to make it very shortcut, would be the Tsushima Bayu originally it belonged to Manganji temple. It's a Buddhist temple located in Tsushima-cho of Ehime prefecture in Shikoku Island. So perhaps I show you 1-2 photos. So this is you can see I don't have any pointer, nothing is there. So this is Shikoku Island, and Ehime prefecture is that grey color, and Tsushima Bayu is just on the seashore. It's a fisherman's village, mostly by the fishermen. They are living there. And this is that Manganji temple. This Manganji means that fulfills all your wishes, gives you some kind of punnata. That means it's a Buddhist temple where the main deity is Vaishyaja Guru, the medicine Buddha. And perhaps 1-2 more I have. And this is Vaishyaja Guru's small temple inside that main temple, and this is the medicine Buddha who is worshipped there. And this Tsushima Bayo was kept there, and people thought it's a Buddhist scripture, and they used to worship that, touching that and touching the part of their body where they had some problem. So it was like that for some 200 years like that. And to find out its existence prior to this temple, then we need further research. We don't know how it came there. So in 1941, Mr. Morita, Tomiyoshi Morita of that particular village, he bought this manuscript from a pawn shop at Uwajima city, the nearby city, along with few other old documents. And it is quite possible that the manuscript was sold to a pawn shop after the Second World War, when the temples suffered from very severe financial crisis. And he thought it a Buddhist scripture and worshipped it with Vaishyaja Guru, medicine Buddha, the tutelary deity of the temple and of his house also. This area is very famous for medicine Buddha. People love medicine Buddha very much. And he was offering incense every day, and this incense offering protected the manuscript from insects, although it was done without knowing the method of manuscript preservation. Then he requested Otani University and few other university, Otani University in Kyoto, very far from Shikoku actually, and few other universities majoring in Buddhism for a study on it, as he was curious to know the contents. But it seems these universities were not much interested in this manuscript because of the unfamiliar script and language, and his request was ended off with a cold response. After few years, because of some unfortunate happening in the family, Mr. Morita's son thought to return it to the original owner, that is this Manganji temple, and he thought it would be the best for the manuscript, as he is not the right person to take care of this sacred scripture. But just at that time, a member of the Committee of the Protection of Cultural Properties of the village, he came to know about it, and he proposed him to donate the manuscript to the village administration office. Then although I am telling village, it's actually a proper town, actually the name is village. And then on 13th January 1993, Mr. Morita donated officially that manuscript to the Social Education Division of Tsushimacho village, and now it has been declared as the cultural property of the city and kept very carefully there. And with their due permission, we started working on that. And so now what is this Tsushima Bayo, what does it contain, is that according to the opinions of the experts in the field, it is assumed that this particular manuscript might have been transcribed around the early 17th century. But according to my personal observation, it should be of a much later date actually. Anyway, the entire text has been written in medieval Odia language using the Karani script, and the invocation to Lord Ganesha in the beginning, it is only in Sanskrit. So there are 221 folios, recto and verso, so both comes at 442, quite a big one, and it is a part of the Mahabharata in Odia language by the famous Odia poet Adikavi Shudramuni Sri Sarala Dasa. And we have already talked much about him, so I am not going to say anything about the poet. And it can be said undoubtedly that the Tsushima Bayo is the first part of the Aranyaka Parva chapter of the Sarala Mahabharata, as the manuscript begins with the sentence Sri Mahabharata Aranyaka Parva Prathama Khanda Lekhnaha, and it ends with the sentence Sri Aranyaka Parva Prathama Khanda Sampurna. So, and it occupies about 1/10 of the entire Mahabharata written by Sarala Dasa. And so just one small portion I enlarged that so that you can see Sri Mahabharata Aranyaka Parva Prathama Khanda Lekhnaha, it is there, and that proves that it is by Sarala Dasa. And another point is that in Odia poetry, particularly in the pre-modern time, the name of the reciter, that is Bhanita, it is mentioned generally at the end of a chapter or subchapter or at the end of a complete work. So it is a typical characteristic of Odia poetic works, and in the present manuscript, this Tsushima Bayo, too, the name of Sarala Dasa is mentioned several times as the Bhanita, the reciter. So it too suggests that the Tsushima Bayo is one of the transcribed manuscripts of the widely known Odia Mahabharata written by Sri Sarala Dasa. And the meter, it is in medieval Odia language and in Karani script, and the meter used is called Dandi Brutta or Dandi Brutti. So it is very interesting, this meter is very interesting. It has 2 lines make a verse, and but it is not necessary that both lines should have the same number of letters. The number of letters generally vary from 11 to 21. So sometimes you can see the first line is this size in the manuscript, but the second line is this size. So, but it is there is a system. Although the length of each line varies, the last letter of each line is mostly the same to create a melodious and rhythmical sound, and it is greatly influenced by the popular folk songs of Odisha. This just for your information, the Tsushima Bayo is the first and the only palm leaf manuscript discovered in Japan that is written in Odia language using Karani script. So far we don't have any other manuscript, although we have many from Thailand, Sri Lanka and Nepal, but not from Odisha. So what is there inside this particular manuscript? This Tsushima Bayo begins with an invocation to Lord Ganesha, and here Sage Agasti plays the role of a narrator and narrates the entire story to Vaivasuta Manu in the form of answering to his questions. The first episode starts from the game of dice between the Pandava and the Kaurava brothers, and the Pandava brothers lost the game, and according to the condition of the game they had to leave the country and go for Vanavasa for 13 years. That's the typical story of Mahabharata, as all of you know. The present manuscript gives a detailed account of the life of the Pandava brothers in the forest as wood dwellers and different incidents that took place during that period. So I am just briefing out some portion, and this manuscript ends with the episode of demon Nikumbha, his death as Arjuna's hand. So the manuscript stops here. There are some special features of this Tsushima Bayo, of this particular manuscript. Some of them I would like to introduce. So first one is, generally the Southeast Asian manuscripts have one binding hole in the center for shorter leaves and 2 binding holes in both sides, left and right, for longer leaves, so that they can tie it properly. But the Tsushima Bayo has only one binding hole in the center, though the average width is about 46 cm, quite long. It is a peculiar characteristic of most of the palm leaf manuscripts of Odisha to have only one binding hole in the center regardless of the length. So, and the Tsushima Bayo is representing the peculiarity of palm leaf manuscript tradition of Odisha. So that confirmed us that it was not written in Japan, but it was written in Odisha, and somehow it was completed its journey and ended up in Japan. And as the writing style and the form of letters are they vary in few places, so it can be assumed that the entire manuscript was inscribed by more than one scribe, maybe about at least 3 scribes. And except the invocation part, the entire manuscript is written in standard medieval Odia language, but at places expressions belonging to the dialects of Western Odisha are found. It increases the probability that at least one of the scribes was from the western part of Odisha, or the entire manuscript was written in Western Odisha. There are 2 well-known published versions of Sarla Mahabharata. One is Mahabharata published by Dharmagrantha store, that is most popular at homes, not for the academics perhaps. And the other one is the Sarla Mahabharata edited by Dr. Artavallabh Mahanti and published by Department of Culture, Government of Odisha in 1966. That is, so far as I know, that is the only one existing that to be used by the scholars, and they are using it because of a proper, I don't know what do they mean by proper. It is always said to me that it is a proper edited one. Anyway, in both the published works, the current Parva, this Banapar, Aranyaka Parva's title is Banaparva. But in Tsushima Bayo, it is mentioned as Aranyaka Parva, that corresponds with the Mahabharata in Sanskrit published by the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. So both the terms, the Aranyaka Parva and the Bana Parva, bear the same meaning, that is the section on forest dwelling, but with different expressions. The most interesting thing in the Tsushima Bayo is that all the characters or places mentioned here are very typical of Odisha. For example, Lord Krishna, the leading character of the Mahabharata, is depicted in the present manuscript as Lord Jagannatha, the most popular and tutelary deity of Odisha. Lord Jagannatha, who is generally portrayed without proper hands or feet, rides on the back of Garuda like Lord Vishnu and acts here exactly in the same way as Lord Krishna is described in the Sanskrit Mahabharata. Again, it is accepted so far that Lord Krishna was born somewhere in the neighborhood of present-day Mathura, but Lord Krishna of the Tsushima Bayo is a native of Odisha. Moreover, most probably for a higher evaluation, he does not belong to the Shudra caste, he is a Brahmin here. And typical Odia dishes also we find, and names of Baitarani, Chitrotpala and many other rivers that flow in Odisha, you find them in this manuscript. Here too we can see the epic being dyed with Odia culture, and we can find much more examples of this kind. It may be assumed that poet Sri Sarla Dasa brought all these changes in his work based on the tradition and customs of Odisha to make the Mahabharata familiar to the utmost possibility to the people of Odisha. Hence, it is not at all an Odia translation of the Mahabharata, rather it is the Mahabharata of completely a Odia version. And what kind of research we are doing on that? So, with the help of the Scientific Research Grant Creative and Pioneering Research by the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science, it is a quasi-government organization under the Ministry of Education. So, from 2008 to 2011, this manuscript was digitalized and diplomatic edition along with the supplementary critical notes were prepared. Then again with the same fellowship, same grant, the research continued from 2011 to 15, and this time the main purpose of the research was to make a critical edition of the Tsushima Bayo so that a Japanese translation of the manuscript can be made. The Tsushima Bayo is the only Odia palm leaf manuscript discovered in Japan, so scholars are here very eager to know the contents. Without a critical edition, it is difficult to make a Japanese translation of it. And 10 manuscripts of the first part of Banaparva of the Sarla Mahabharata were collected from different sources for the critical apparatus of the Tsushima Bayo. They were collected from different places to get rich variants for the Shuddha Patha. The Tsushima Bio, being the main text, is edited with these variants, and utmost attention is paid to avoid any arbitrary interpolation of words or sentence while doing the Shuddha Patha. The most difficult part of this work was the collection of manuscripts for the critical apparatus. It was not so easy that I thought. To find only the first part of the Banaparva, that also in readable condition, was not so easy to get. I am very sorry to say, but to get a copy of a manuscript from a university or museum or other government repositories, it is like a daydream. It was for us also a daydream. So I started searching in private collections and was lucky to get some to fulfill my requirements. And there was one in Tübingen University in Germany that was not at all complicated to get the copies. And I just hope sincerely that the situations get better to provide a research-friendly environment in future in India. But the good side of this tiring effort was that I was introduced with another side of the epic literature. So perhaps I can show you one. So when I started collecting, I was a failure to collect the things from the museums and university repositories. So I started moving around in the villages, particularly the Brahmin dominated villages, and I was successful to collect my 9 manuscripts for my critical apparatus. And this is a family, they were having some manuscripts, and this old lady gave me all her manuscripts. I did not ask for that. She gave me all her manuscripts that she was keeping since the last 3 generations, and there were Mahabharata, Ramayana and Purana in her basket. This man is her son, and that is the daughter-in-law. And by donating the manuscript, she prayed for her daughter-in-law to be blessed with a child, and she asked me to do that for her. So I was really touched. It compelled me to think about the other aspect of epic literature that supports the spiritual life of the villager so strongly even today. For us, the epics are, perhaps, at least for me, perhaps I, as an academician, I take as a genre of literature, but for this old lady it was the most valuable thing she had, that she could offer to get a grandchild. And although the family never read those manuscripts, they never opened those manuscripts, but knowing only that they are Ramayana, Mahabharata and Puranas, perhaps that was enough for them to revere and protect that for generations. And these are the manuscripts she gave me all. I am keeping that in that village, asking the village people, the temple, they have provided. So now I wanted some 8 to 10 manuscripts for my critical apparatus, and now I have, in that way, I have collected more than 300 manuscripts. People gave me, and I am very happy for that. And with my personal some effort, I am trying to keep that. I have kept that with their photos, with their short history of that particular house, because it's a belief they have established, not giving that to the museum but to giving that to me. So I must have to keep their faith on me. And I asked ICI, this INTAC, this conservation center for the conservation, and one NGO group, they are digitalizing all the manuscripts for me. And so this transmission of the Sarala Mahabharata, in the beginning few folios of the Tsushima Bio, a different story is told which is not found in the A.B. Mohanty edition, which is the only academic edition in Odisha. It gives a background story for the Vanavasa of the Pandava brothers, justifying their Vanavasa to save Mother Earth. Not only that, it portrays how human beings are nothing but puppets at the hands of the gods, having no escape from their elaborate and systematic plan of action. The most of the manuscript collected for the critical apparatus follow a kind of similar sequence to the A.B. Mohanty edition, but Tsushima Bio is not following that sequence. This background story of the Vanavasa of the Pandavas is about 300 verses. So 300 verses you find extra here in this manuscript that you don't find in that particular sequence in the A.B. Mohanty edition. And my some of my colleagues, they said that in the beginning I thought myself also thought them as later interpolation of 300 verses, but 300 verses as later interpolation did not let me feel comfortable at all. Later I found out that these 300 verses do exist in the A.B. Mohanty edition, but the edition 2, but in the Sabha Parva, that is just before the Vana Parva. So it is quite probable that the Sarala Mahabharata had at least 2 lineages of transmission. So one including these 300 verses in Sabha Parva, and another including them these 300 verses in Vana Parva. So in the former it functions like a afterword to the Sabha Parva, and in the later it functions like a forward to the Vana Parva. So we need some more manuscripts actually to find out the other possibilities of transmission. And then we had the problems of variants. For the critical edition, when I made parallels of the verses in different manuscripts, I found that although all the manuscripts narrate the same story using the same meter, in most of the cases the way of the expression words used are different to each other. They are not variants. It is like different persons are narrating the same story but in their own style, not diverting at all from the main points, not diverting at all from the sequence, and not corrupting at all the meter also. Some scholars opine that it as scribal error, very common in manuscript studies, as all of you know. Some said that it is scribal mischief, changed by the scribe intentionally. But as there exists no inappropriate word, sentence or meter, it would not be justified to conclude as scribal error or scribal mischief. Rather, I would prefer to give a new expression, intellectual scribal humor. Unlike Sanskrit, as it is in Odia, the scribe or narrator has a comfortable access to the language, the Odia language, and shows his intellectual ability narrating the verses in a different style. That is why all the 10 manuscripts, they are having their own styles. And it is not just copying a text, rather an effort has been put to show the individual intellectual skill of the scribe. It seems the copyists, as far as Odia copyists are concerned, were highly educated and used to possess high literary poetic skill. A thorough study is required to reveal if this peculiarity is confined to the Sarala Mahabharata only, or it extends to other narrative literature of Odisha as well as other parts of India, particularly in the vernacular narrative literature. How the Tsushima Bio was transmitted to Japan is still shrouded in the darkness. However, the possibility of travelling from Odisha through the sea route is very high. Some people say that it was first found from a wrecked ship of the pirates. And it is well known that Odisha had trade relations with Southeast Asia, particularly with the Indonesian islands and of Bali, Java, etc. And a symbolic festival is still celebrated with pomp in the month of Kartika, known as Bali Jatra, commemorating the ancient maritime legacy. Hence, it could be possible that Tsushima Bio travelled from Odisha to Indonesia and then from Indonesia to Japan through the sea route. In addition, Japanese chronicles like the 7th century chronicles like Nihon Shoki or Nihon Ryoiki give an account of the construction of the first Buddha or Bodhisattva image that corresponds to the myth of Lord Jagannatha's idol making, such as the king ordered to make an idol of the deity using the bright fragrance tree that comes floating in the sea, and blah blah blah. You find that all of you must be knowing this Jagannatha idol making, so it is very similar to that. So it suggests some possibilities of the relationship between Japan and Odisha to some extent, if not directly. Although it is very difficult to prove with concrete evidence which one of the two myths is earlier in period and whether one had the influence upon another, the importance of myth in establishing authenticity in ancient cultures was great, and the parallels between similar myths in two distant but not completely unconnected lands suggests possible connections that are worthy for further research. Apart from this, in Nagasaki, there is a famous in Kyushu Island, there is a famous kite festival. Among other kites, a special kind of kite, they are called Baramon, very huge kite, they call Baramon, that draws attention because of its resembling appearance with Lord Jagannatha. And Baramon does not seem to be a typical Japanese term. The widely known meaning of the term Baramon in Japan is for Brahmana or Brahmin, they call Baramon. So why this name Baramon is there, they also don't know. And you can see this is this Baramon kite. It looks very much like Lord Jagannath, and you can see the people are here, and it is so high, still it is so big. So almost like a 6 feet or 7 feet height kite. And so this is one Baramon kite, and this is Lord Jagannatha. And when I have seen many of, I went to see at least 10 or 15, and I found, I don't have a pointer, perhaps here I can try, here. You see this style, it is very typical of Odisha style. Now I am also wearing this sari, and in every kite they were having that design only. Their cloth was having this bapta style, nothing else you find. And so this is Jagannatha, Balabhadra, Subhadra, and that is their Baramon kite. And what was most fascinating for me, if you see, one is like Jagannath, this is like Balabhadra, and the middle one with Haladi Mukha, with yellow figure, that is very typical of a special characteristic of Subhadra. And to make it a female form, it is very tiny and cute, you know, this middle one is very cute. And I think, yeah. So a minute study of the Tsushima Bio, this manuscript, Sarala Mahabharata manuscript, is expected to reveal various aspects of relation between Japan and India, particularly with Odisha. Here it will not be merely a literary study, but a cultural study as well. For the Tsushima Bio, this Sarala Mahabharata manuscript, the scholars around me sometimes comment, oh, okay, this is an Odia translation of the Mahabharata, we got it, finish. And then I always try to convince them that Sarala Mahabharata is not at all an Odia translation of the Mahabharata, rather it should be considered as a completely different text, an independent text. As there is no translation of the Sarala Mahabharata in English or in other languages, so far as I know, scholars do not have an access to it, and it is rather difficult for them to understand what I mean by Odia version. And translation of the Tsushima Bio into English and Japanese, it is my very humble attempt, because I am not working on Mahabharata or epics, so but it's a very small humble attempt in this direction to let this great work accessible for others, not confined to Odisha only. And much scholarly devotion is needed for the study of vernacular epics to have the international perspective in its true sense. The last but not the least is the another intellectual window on Odia epic study, particularly on Mahabharata, is now slowly opening in China. Just started opening little bit in last November. Last year November I was invited to Beijing to see a huge collection of some Buddhist manuscripts, because my specialization is Buddhism. So they wanted me to see some manuscripts there, and I heard that it is Burmese manuscript and Singhali manuscript and Tibetan manuscripts. But when I visited, I found among them a huge number of Odia manuscripts also. So all these Odia epics or Puranas and Mahabharatas, they are waiting for the scholars to explore them in foreign soil. Perhaps in our next meeting I will be in a position to introduce them more elaborately. And just to show you about this new discovery of manuscripts, this is my colleague in China. It is in Beijing, and it is in a private collection. It's a millionaire. He is having his own 2 museums. It was in one of the museums, and so here you can see some gold. The edges are painted in gold. It is a Tibetan manuscript this side, and this side from Burma and Thailand we have. And then so this is Khmer manuscript from Cambodia, Khmer script, but it is made of gold. looks like manuscript shape but made of gold. And so now here this is Oriya manuscript. So these two manuscripts I was not able to see them, but they say it belongs to 12th 13th century, but I have to see that perhaps in my next visit. And what we could see and work little bit in a short stay. So these are all the manuscripts. It is only a small portion you can see, and the person in the middle, he is the owner, the millionaire who is having all these manuscripts. And this kind of hall, there are perhaps 10 to 12 I could see. So, and these are the some professors from their Beijing University who was working on that, and we could finish only 5 boxes in 2 days, not more than that. That was over my capacity actually. And so these are the 5 boxes we could finish, and making a not very detailed but making a simple catalog for them in 2 days. And 101 manuscripts we have until now recorded. And you can see here it is Srimad Bhagavata Gita, that is in Karani in Odia, and this is Sri Mahabharata Krishna Singha Kritya Sabha Parva. So Krishna Singha Mahabharata Sabha Parva is there. And this is Mathura Mangala, Karani Odia, and then Vaidehisa Vilasa, Karani Odia. So these are the manuscripts, they are there and they are waiting for the scholars to be explored. They are there since the last 40-50 years it seems. So anyway, so I would like to conclude with the enlightening words of sage Ashtabakra in the Vanaparva of Mahabharata. Natena sthaviro bhavati yenasya palitang shiraha balopi yaha prajanati tang devaha sthavirang viduhu. Na hayanair na palitair na vittena na bandhuvihi rishayas chakrire dharmang yonu chanaha sano mahan. So one is not venerable because his head is grey, he is having white hair. The gods regard even a child as venerable if he is possessed of knowledge. The sages have proclaimed the law that not by years, not by grey hairs, not by riches or not by many relations, but only by learning one becomes great to us. So let's all of us do something, whatever we can in our own ability to do something for learning, to acquire and to give both. Thank you so much.